Hey, it's Jeff. Welcome back. Today we are starting the Blunder Check playlist, and we're just gonna get into it. As always, we have a link to this in the description, if I remember, and so you can read this or listen to the video. And let's get started. So, the goal of the series is to practice applying tactics to games, and we're gonna try to prevent blunders, improve your board vision, improve calculation, and improve your thought process. So these are like the key skills and groups of skills that we want to focus on. Not necessarily knowledge of openings or positional evaluation or anything like that. Just looking at the position and seeing, am I blundering, basically. And how we accomplish this goal, we'll guess the moves to chess.com rapid games. Or I should say, we'll look at every move that someone plays in a rapid game, and we will evaluate if it's a blunder or not. So we're just going to focus on that last step where you have a move in mind, you're ready to play it, but you need to make that last check of does it actually blunder anything? Because that's where most of the mistakes are being made. Like under 1500, it's being made in places where you make a move and then, oh, you didn't see that they can take your piece when you put it there, or you fall into a fork when you make a certain move. So that's kind of thing we're targeting. There'll be two playlists initially planned, one at 1000 chess.com rapid level and one at 1500. We may do more depending on how people like it, so your feedback will always be appreciated. And the main focus, like I said, forcing moves. So I already talked about that. Now I'll do 15 games at each rating level for a total of 30 videos initially. And one thing that's different about this is usually when you're watching YouTube or reading a book, it can be passive learning unless you're deliberately trying to make it active. But the way that the videos will be structured is that it will encourage active learning rather than passive learning. So so I do want people to on each move pause the video and think about the things that I'm asking, and and I think that'll help with people getting practice, like building the skills, rather than just saying, "Oh, just don't blunder." Well, we'll actually get practice with things that come up in your games, pretty much. So I recommend guessing the move, and let's see how much. I'm just talking about solitaire chess there. So let's look. What? Okay, how much time should I spend guessing per move? I recommend 15 seconds to 1 minute on average. Like you can pick, like if you want to do every move 15 seconds, you can. If you want to do every one minute, you can. Or you can do like more. I don't recommend doing less than 15 seconds though. And the reason is it's because I talk about it down here. So like a 10-minute rapid game, on average you would have about 15 seconds. So like the low end of stuff still being rapid is about 15 seconds per move on average. So when you're playing Blitz and Bullet, you're doing more intuition and pattern recognition, and you don't have time to do a full like blunder check all the time. Like you can't really calculate deep if the position needs it or not. So like if you're like let's say you're doing 30 seconds on average, if you find a position pretty difficult and you're not sure if you've completely solved it, feel free to actually take more. So that's actually better for your chest than not. But also picking a smaller number can help people get through the videos like quicker. So I'm already kind of limiting how much we're doing by starting the moves after move 11. But I'm also looking at games that go no further than move 25. And so those are the kind of like middle game blunders that we're going to try to target. So that helps to keep the game shorter, but also you can think sometime between this range and the whole training won't take too long. Okay. So yeah, people can read through this if they want like the full information. And what about opening strategy and end games? As we said, most of the blunders, like especially if anyone's here has seen the non-wall physics training, we know that a lot of the times it was just basic tactical blunders that keeps a lot of people around 1000 to 1500. So a lot of the other things, like whether your development was great or not, like a lot of these things can influence the game a little bit, but there's people that can play a really good game, have a really good position on move 40, and then blunder their rook on move 41, and then they lose the game. So it's very devastating. Like in a tournament game, you're spending hours and you have a really good position only to make a careless blunder and then lose it. So that's why really just focusing on preventing blunders is going to be the fastest thing anyone can do to improve their chess. Up to 1500 at least. But even like up to 2000, like the advice is still useful. But the higher you go, the more other parts of chess start to creep in to be a little bit more useful. So that's kind of where I would put it. And also keep in mind, positional playing strategy is about accumulating small advantages, and that kind of goes back to you can spend the whole game accumulating small advantages over small advantages, but once you make that blunder, that's a big disadvantage. So like the evaluations, it might go up like plus 0.1 or plus 0.3 occasionally, but once you lose that knight, it goes down like -3. It just takes away all that progress and then some. Okay, positional play, stuff about that. Also, usually when I'm teaching people, like I do stress tactics a lot, but if people have more time in a day, it does make sense to try to be a little bit more well-rounded and study some other things. Um, but then a lot of people, they're limited on time. They want to make the best use of their time and improve quickly. In those cases, I definitely recommend just doing tactics, at least, and playing games. Like that combo would be enough to improve a lot of people if they're doing the training appropriately. So a lot of people complain on Reddit that they do lots of tactics but aren't improving. They aren't seeing tactics in their games. But I think chances are they're still blundering. And so that disconnect is part of what we're going to talk about in the series, or at least like as we go through the exercises of going through games and trying to blunder check, we'll see why that is, and you'll be able to compare your blunder check versus mine, and try to. And if I'm doing a better job than you, then hopefully, like my explanations of how I'm blunder checking will help you reach my level and understand what things am I looking for, like how quickly am I seeing certain things and why. So I'll try to, as best as I can, explain what's going on while I'm doing a blunder check. And by isolating just this blunder check aspect of chess, we eliminate a lot of other things that can go on, like whether your time management is good or bad, doesn't matter. Where do you know about openings, doesn't matter. What openings you play, doesn't matter. How much endgame knowledge you have. A lot of stuff doesn't matter when it comes to making a blunder. All that matters is you see the forcing moves and can evaluate if it's a blunder or not. And sometimes that requires some calculation, like a few moves ahead. So your visualization into the future might also be one thing holding you back from blunder checks. But for people around 1000, sometimes the blunders are just things that you don't need visualization to see. You just need board vision, like looking at the board and recognizing that something is being attacked. So, so if we by doing a lot of games in this format, we'll get a lot of practice, and you should start to see some improvement with that. And then I talk about the end games, like some main end games to know down here, and really, like I just try to win material, like even if it's just a pawn, and then I trade down and try to win the end game. So you don't need too much in game knowledge to be like a pretty decent player. Okay, I talked about that. So blitz and bullet. I talked about this a little bit earlier too. That you don't have enough time to calculate efficiently. So if you're trying to improve your blunder checks, but you only play blitz and bullet, then it's going to be pretty difficult because you're not practicing a good thought process that really gives you enough time to evaluate all the forcing moves. Now, if you're doing like chess tempo practice on the side where you're spending 3 to 5 minutes or maybe 10 minutes on a puzzle, then you're definitely getting more practice in calculation, and you can apply that in blitz and bullet as well. Just you have to speed things up a lot. But usually, if you're only playing fast chess, it's going to be hard to build those habits that that are just necessary, because it's all like it's kind of like your ceiling is influenced by how good you are at slow chess, because you always have to imagine like if your slow chess rating is 3,000, then when you play Blitz and Bullet, you might go down to like you might lose 100 points in your strength or something. Um, but then you're still 2,900, so that's still better than most people. But if you're like 500 in Blitz, then I forgot my analogy, but but you get it. You can put together what I was thinking. Um, anyway, calculation is a skill, needs regular practice. Yeah, we already talked about that stuff. So the series is mainly for people who are stuck and don't feel like they're improving. And I think part of it is they're just overwhelmed by a lot of the knowledge that's out there. Nowadays we have tons of YouTube channels all giving different advice, wanting you to watch their videos, buy their courses, and so on. So, and maybe I'm adding to the problem by having more information out there. But part of what I'm doing with this, like this whole Notion site, which eventually I should make a video kind of introducing it and talking about what can be found here. Because right now, like the nominal physics stuff I have here, so you could check that. And for your chess understanding playlist, I have that. And now we're on the Blunder check one. But part of what I'm doing here is I'm trying to build like a good knowledge base of just things that I think are important for people to improve, and while also trying to go into more detail than you would find elsewhere. And I take feedback like questions people ask me and try to incorporate that into answers so that anyone else that finds this page, they can find all the answers to any question that they have in terms of chess improvement and what should be prioritized. Um, but yeah, so just people that are stuck, and the goal is to get people to 1500 chess.com rapid. Okay. Tactical intuition versus calculation. Tactical skill is made up of these two skills. So tactical intuition is your pattern recognition for common patterns and your ability to quickly see features in a position that suggests a tactic that could be likely. So this helps mostly in blitz chess, but it also saves time and energy in classical games. You can immediately understand the main problems and solve. And your candidate moves are more accurate from the start. So your candidate moves are going to be like the moves that you initially consider in a position, they all come from your intuition and just what you're seeing immediately in the position. And so the more experience you have in chess, the more accurate you'll be with your candidate moves and the faster you'll see good moves. Now, if you don't have that experience, it's not the end of the world. And the best thing that will help you is if you have more time to think, then you can focus on looking at things more manually and then trying to calculate that way. But over time, like you will get better at it. And as a start, your candidate moves should always include all the forcing moves, so all the checks and the captures. And if possible, see as many threats as you can, but usually just the first two, especially if you're starting out, will get you like 90% of the way there. So, because like if you're doing tactics, all tactics would just be a sequence of forcing moves pretty much. So like you can look at any tactical puzzle and identify that, okay, this move was a check, and then there was another check, but then there was a capture, and then sometimes they're like threats. So the higher rated ones, especially on chess tempo, they might start with a threat that'll threaten a check or a capture. That's hard to prevent. And those are definitely the hardest to see because they're often like quiet moves. But they're quiet moves, but they're still forcing because they limit the opponent's choices. Because if they don't address the quiet move, then they will lose material pretty much. So, okay. So that's pretty much that. And Botvinnik's training method. So Botvinnik recommended that during training games you pay most attention to your main deficiency until it disappears. For example, he recommended people with time trouble problems to pay attention mostly to the clock during training games and don't worry about the quality of the play. And that's the approach that we're taking here by only focusing on the forcing moves as it pertains to blunder checks. We are isolating the one skill and situation that prevents most people from improving, the things that they know they should be doing, but they still, for some reason, still blunder, and just worrying about that. Because a lot of people, they know that they're bad and they blunder a lot, but then they also spend too much time studying openings, too much time studying everything else, and just looking at, okay, well, what else could I do to improve at chess? And when really you just need to pick like one or two skills and just really build mastery of them, and then you will start to see improvement in your rating. So, what is a blunder check? Um, well, I'll start by saying I might sometimes give my opinions and evaluations on positional play, but the main focus is on tactics as it relates to doing a blunder check, the last thing you do before playing a move. So, whatever move you decide to play, do a blunder check. You visualize the move being made and do one last check of the forcing moves that the opponent will have once you have made your move. So tons of players can recall situations where they made a move and immediately saw that it was a blunder. The blunder check is like time travel if done correctly, and um, and you get the same realization of making a blunder without actually playing the move on the board and committing to that decision. So it would cut down on this situation a lot if you intentionally remember to do it. This is the thing, even I forget sometimes because there'll be games I play where I make a blunder, then I look and I see like, how did I ever make this blunder? Like if I legit looked at all checks, captures, and threats, there is no way I would have missed this. So I do recommend getting like a piece of paper or a sticky note and putting somewhere that's visible that you can look at every game before every game to blunder check every move. Like just remind yourself of doing this, and then you'll start to notice that you're looking for blunders more, and that's the first step to decreasing them is to be aware and to actually look for them, because it's very easy to go on autopilot and go to your old habits where you weren't actually doing this every move. Also, another way that this comes up is when you play the opening, a lot of the times you start off with memorized moves, and and then once you leave like your opening prep, that's the point where you take like the first big think. And I think the transition from playing a lot of opening moves instantly because you had to memorize to having to blunder check is one thing where people start to forget that, oh, they need to start doing this. And one thing is you could just try to blunder check the opening moves as well, especially in slow play, because if for some reason your memory was bad and you misremember something, at least a blunder check could save you from making a blunder when you played a move instantly that you thought was theory that you memorized, but something was slightly off. So yeah, transition from playing memorized moves to getting a new position is one thing that people probably struggle with. Okay, so Ben Fineco's advice. I have a video that you can watch if you want to hear it from a grandmaster and not me. And I do summarize a little bit what he says, that a lot of people don't improve because they don't have a good side of board and they make bad moves that they know are bad, like falling for a one move tactic, hanging a rook, and thinking about your own moves and not the opponent's. And then he also talks about how strategy and opening knowledge, who has a slight advantage, will not matter, and your coaches are teaching you things that don't matter. But that kind of phrasing is always just going to be debatable. Like they're going to say, well, of course, like things that people are teaching is important. Like I remember Naroditsky taught Moist Critical some opening knowledge, and like he beat SQC in 6 moves or something, right? So some things do help, but then if you look at that overall, like how often is Moist Critical beating other people in 6 moves? Probably not that much. And once people catch on to that, then that opening knowledge doesn't have the same benefit. So actually learning to not blunder is going to help you on every move of every game. Opening knowledge only helps you if people play exactly into the opening lines you study. And then sometimes some aspects of opening, like the positional plans and stuff, that can help guide you when you don't know what to do. But even then, that's mostly accumulating small advantages when you're too focused on positional play. And if you're someone that still makes these kind of one move blunders where you lose a rook, then everything else really isn't going to help you nearly as much as more practice in eliminating those blunders from your game. Okay, and in there he also quoted Lawrence Trent, who had the opinion that you just need to do tactics until you're 2200. Ben didn't agree with that, but it shows how much emphasis people have on tactics. And I also link a Reddit AMA where Magnus kind of said a similar thing, where someone asked, they're trying to break the 2000 barrier. I was wondering if you give any advice to achieve my goal. And he said, studying tactics. I would say up to that level, most games are still decided by hanging a piece or blundering a checkmate. So yeah, a lot of people they definitely place a lot of emphasis on tactical studying for lower rated players because every time they look at a lower rated player's games, it's just filled with these basic blunders that stronger players, master level players will just not make because their blunder check has been pretty much perfected in terms of avoiding one move tactics at least most of the time. When you're playing Blitz and Bullet, anything can happen, but usually in longer games, you rarely see very strong players making some of these one move blunders. Okay, and then there were some people. I looked at the comments of the video and the stream and kind of responded to some of them. Um, like someone said who was interested in lost games. And then I quoted Capablanca, who said that you learn a lot more from a game you lose than a game you win. You have to lose hundreds of games before becoming a good player. And pretty much the main way people say to get better at chess is to play games and then study your games and analyze the reasons for your mistakes and so on. So, and that's kind of what we're doing. Like, you're going to learn how to prevent blunders and get practice without having to directly play games. So, for some people, that might be a plus because nobody likes to just play games, blunder, and then lose. So, instead, you can learn from other people's blunders. Because we'll be doing active learning, you'll be trying to guess the move that the opponent might make to punish the move that we're following. And then and so if you're taking more time, then you can recreate a game-like setting. You can even set up the position on a board if you want. Um, and then the feedback will be instant. So it'll be better than getting engine feedback. So it'll be kind of like a coaching lesson pretty much as well. And because we're looking at the same position, some of the stuff that you might be looking at, I might address. So there'll definitely be more opportunities to learn immediately how well your blunder check was than it would be if you're just playing a game. Okay, so and then there's the classic comment: I see tactics but never see them in games. And the series it aims to practice finding tactics in games while also showing how a stronger player approaches the exact same problem for instant feedback. So, and okay, someone says they know they blunder all the time. What they want to know is how to stop blundering. They struggle to identify what they're doing wrong, and they can't apply it in the game. And so the answer to stop blundering is to scan the board for every check and capture, no matter how bad the move is. Sometimes the best move is an unexpected force move that appears to be losing. Practice will make you faster at this, and as you learn more patterns, it will also become easier to see which of the force moves are likely to be a threat or not. And then there's another person that actually understands pretty well. They said that it comes to considering your opponent's moves. That's why we often see mistakes instantly after playing it. We play a move, then we start thinking of our opponent's move and see the mistake. You have to force yourself to consider your opponent's resources or response to every move until it becomes automatic. I was just playing longer time controls until it becomes ingrained. The only thing I would add to that is some of the other reasons that this might happen is that if your visualization of one move ahead is bad, then even though you're looking for blunders intentionally, it's foggy in your mind and you can't really see if something's being attacked or not, and that can also lead to blunders. It definitely does when it's like 3 to 5 moves plus, but for lower rated players, even one move ahead or just the position on the board can be trouble. And it doesn't mean like you're less intelligent or anything. Like there's some people down here that talk about not this one, but there's some people that talk about like intelligence differences and stuff and blame that, but a lot of that stuff you can train. You can train visualization, you can train tactical vision, you can train just general calculation. Like everything you can really train, and we're not saying like everyone's gonna go out and try to become a grandmaster overnight. For most people, even just getting to 2000 is like a huge deal compared to where they started. So, and that doesn't really take any special talent, to be honest. So it just takes a lot of time and dedication. Like some people, like if there was talent, then talent might help some people get there faster, but it doesn't mean that you will never be there. So, and whether it takes you 3 years or 7 years to get to the same rating, doesn't matter because once you get there, you can compete with other people at that rating. So. So a lot of people have a fixed mindset where they kind of blame a lot of outside forces, whereas I have more of a growth mindset where I always believe that I can improve on things, and if things aren't working out, I look for other methods of studying. I ask stronger players what they do. I compile a lot of evidence of what things have worked for other people, and I usually make some adjustments based on that. And I've never felt stuck for a very long time. So a lot of plateaus, they can be broken. Some of the main things that prevent people from improving is they just give up too early. They get frustrated with the lack of progress that they're making, and or their priorities just have completely changed. Like it doesn't really make sense for some people to actually try to become a master or a grandmaster. Like if you have a super demanding job, you're always tired after work. Like your lifestyle is is just going to be much more difficult to actually do some things. But even then, if you have like a certain amount of time for chess, you can still make some improvements over time. But you're never going to make optimal progress in chess unless you just have financial independence and you can study chess all the time pretty much. So that's the main reason like a lot of kids can become really good at chess because they don't have any responsibilities. Their parents take care of them and they can just study chess all day if they want it. Then other kids, they might divide their time between chess and video games and going outside and everything else. So there's a lot of different factors that go into who's going to become really good and who won't. But for like across the board, it's a little bit harder for adults, partly because the brain plasticity. Like kids have an easier time learning languages and stuff like that. Um, and and then also just the lifestyle factors. Like you have to pay rent, you have to just have your finances in order. So many other things come up, so many chores, things you have to do. So it definitely is tougher as an adult, but not impossible. And the best way to actually break past that is if you're obsessive enough, then you'll find a way to maximize whatever advantages you do have and what time you have available. But like I said, that kind of lifestyle is not like no sane person would really want that unless they really love the game of chess. So that's why a lot of people they say you really have to love the game in order to become like grandmaster or world champion. Like there's just no other. It's not like people are doing it for money or anything. Like I mean, chess is like a nerdy hobby. Like people like make fun of chess players. Like maybe a little less nowadays, but like if you're trying to do something for recognition from like the wider public, like chess isn't really like the best thing for that. So everyone here is like ideally people that just really like the game, whether they're making money or not, they just like it. And ideally, they want to win more, so they're willing to put time into their hobby and improve. But even that's like not necessary. Like there's people that enjoy just playing thousands of games without studying, and they might not improve at all after a certain point, but they're having fun, and that's all that matters. And people like me, we like having fun by studying and improving to beat our opponents. We like the competitive aspect of chess. So like having like some struggle and then overcoming that goal. Okay, and then there's some like random stuff just going. Like I found some negative comments and respond to those as well. So if you want that stuff, you can read on your own. Um, So, final thoughts. If you haven't checked out the three uses of tactics video I made or the article I wrote along with it, I recommend watching that before starting this series. So, this is what it was. And the main thing is, like I talked about, the three uses of tactics, seeing tactics for your opponent, for yourself, and preventing blunders. And notice that two out of those three deal with your opponent's moves. So, that just goes to show part of why the blunder check is going to be pretty important, or just looking at the opponent's forcing moves. Um, and so that was like the first reason why that's important. But also, if you miss finding a tactic for yourself, chances are you will get more chances later. And if you miss an opponent's tactic, that can decide the game right there if your opponent plays accurately, and then you can't come back. Also, every move, there might be a tactic you can pull off. Every move, there might not be a tactic you can pull off against your opponent. Or in every move, you have chances to go wrong by hanging a piece or something. So finding your opponent's tactics are much more important than finding tactics for yourself. So, because finding opponents that for yourself depends on your opponent making a mistake, but they're not guaranteed to make a mistake. Under certain rating levels, they pretty much are guaranteed to make a mistake, um, but that's not the best way to think about it. So in summary, think of tactics you can do against your opponent as a luxury, but preventing yourself from falling into the opponent's tactics is a necessity. Tactics trainers teach you to find tactics for yourself, but experience in situations where you have to blunder check is necessary to get the full benefit of applying the tactic training to both sides. Okay, also flipping the board while solving tactics is one way to practice blunder checking. And chess tempo is the only one I know of right now that has a setting that will always serve you puzzles from the side of the opponent. So if you select board orientation of player on top, then it will always give you a situation that's like a blunder check. Not exactly because the blunder will have already been played, but then you just have to find what the opponent would do. In that real blunder check, you have to visualize the move that the opponent will that you're gonna play, and then see the stuff. So it's like a half move ahead in the position, whereas this will just get you to actual position after the blunder has been made, and then sometimes that actually makes it a lot easier because well, I'm not gonna get into it, but it just does make it a little bit easier. Okay, so I think that's it for now. I'm unsure if the next video I'll go through a lot of positions where there are blunders, or if I'm going to just start with the series where we try to guess to move through some games. So, but there will be a playlist for this. I'll add it here, and then the order of the playlist will be like the recommended way of going through videos. So with that, hope you enjoyed, and see you in the next one.